The plates were still warm when he said it. You're here because it's your house, not because you're welcome. Nolan didn't raise his voice. He didn't look up. He just dropped the words like they were nothing, like they wouldn't split me open. For a moment, the air didn't move. My hand hovered over the breadbasket. The knife beside me reflected the chandelier above, still swaying from earlier laughter. But the laughter had stopped. Only Callie made a sound. A low breath of amusement, like a joke had landed perfectly. I looked at Nolan. His eyes were back on his plate, already cutting into his chicken, as if we were continuing a different conversation. Riley's fork scraped her plate. She didn't speak. She didn't look at me either. I set the basket down, folded my napkin, took my time. The kind of quiet that follows pain is heavy. No one asks if I'm okay. No one backtracks. When dinner ended, I gathered the dishes out of habit. Callie didn't stop me. Nolan cleared his throat and disappeared into the den. Riley helped stack the bowls but didn't meet my eyes. I wanted to say something to her, to tell her I was fine. But I wasn't. The sink water ran too hot. I didn't flinch. I scrubbed each plate with more force than needed. My hands trembled. I told myself it was just the heat. They'd asked me to move in after Harold passed. Said they wanted me close. Said it would be easier, more loving. Family shouldn't be alone, Nolan told me. That was last year. Now I stood in a kitchen I built scrubbing dishes I paid for, listening to their laughter restart behind the door. I dried my hands slowly. Folded the towel. The chair where Nolan used to sit as a child was still at the table. I stared at it for a long time before turning off the light. Upstairs in the hallway, Riley stood waiting, her hands clenched around her phone. The next morning, Nolan was in the pantry, moving things. He didn't ask, just shifted the rice to the bottom shelf and lined up the canned goods like it was his space now. I stood behind him, watching a box of oatmeal I bought last week go into the donation bin. Less clutter, he said, not turning around. It's more efficient this way. Callie passed by in heels, glanced at me and added, We're just streamlining things. You understand, right? Her tone was sweet, like honey poured over rust. I nodded. That's what I did lately. Nod. The front door opened that afternoon. I stepped toward it, towel still in hand. Callie blocked me gently with her arm. Let me greet them, she said. It's just, when clients come, it's better if it's me. Then quieter. You make things complicated. She smiled like it was a compliment. I stepped back. They use the living room more now. Nolan held meetings there, laptop open, shoes off. Callie sat beside him, with her tablet nodding along. When Riley walked by once, I heard the phrase, property leverage and long-term succession. I wasn't sure if they were talking about the house, but I had a feeling. I offered coffee once. Neither looked up, so I started going upstairs more often. The attic was dusty but mine. My old record player still worked, though it needed coaxing. The crate of vinyls, mostly jazz and early country, was right where I left it. And the chest. Still locked. Still solid. Inside were the documents Harold and I updated after his diagnosis. The deed, the will, the notarized statements. I hadn't opened it in years, but my fingers lingered on the latch now. That evening I heard the front door again. Laughter followed. Voices I didn't know. I stayed upstairs, a record spinning softly beneath the sound of muffled plans. Later that night, I found Riley standing at the attic door, one foot on the stair, holding something behind her back. I took the long way back from the market. There was no rush anymore. No one waiting. No table to set. Just the wind and the weight of plastic handles cutting into my fingers. When I opened the door, the smell of fresh paint hit me. Upstairs, my bedroom door stood half open. Inside, a man in overalls was rolling beige paint over the pale green walls Harold and I had chosen years ago. The color we picked together the week Nolan left for college. My steps faltered. What's happening here? Callie appeared behind me with a too bright smile. Surprise. We thought you'd appreciate a more neutral space. Easier on the eyes, don't you think? I looked past her. My quilt gone. The one I stitched during Harold's chemo? The one Riley used to curl up in when she was sick. The chair in the corner where I nursed Nolan as a baby gone too. Callie followed my gaze. Oh, we donated that old thing. It didn't match the updated look. I didn't answer. My fingers curled around the market bag until the eggs inside shifted. I walked in past the painter into the closet. My clothes were still there but rearranged, labeled bins, matching hangers. Nothing of Harold's left. I went to my desk drawer and pulled out the folded contract. The edges were soft from being opened too many times, but the words hadn't changed. The house was still in my name. Not a cosign. Not a share. Sole ownership recorded and stamped. Callie didn't notice. She was already texting someone from the hallway. That night I didn't sleep in the room. I stayed upstairs on the attic cot next to the chest. Riley had left a folded paper on top of it. I hadn't opened it yet. Downstairs I heard them laughing about something I didn't understand, something that felt like it wasn't meant for me to hear. The attic floor creaked softly beneath my feet as I crossed to turn off the lamp. I hadn't unfolded the cot yet. I was still thinking about the chair, the way it vanished, like it never mattered. Then I heard it, a voice light and bitter, rising from the vent in the floor. "She's not going anywhere unless we prove she's unfit," Callie said. "She still owns it. That's the problem. But if she loses capacity..." A pause. "Then let's speed that up." I didn't move. Even my breath stilled. The record player had stopped spinning long ago, but I hadn't noticed. Below me, Nolan's voice was quieter. "We just need to nudge the situation. She's already forgetting things. It wouldn't be hard." Callie laughed. "She doesn't even realize the medicine cabinet's been rearranged." I stood still for what felt like an hour. Later, I lay awake on the cot, eyes fixed on the rafters. I didn't cry. There was no point in crying over something that had already started weeks ago, maybe longer. At dawn, Riley knocked once before entering. She looked pale, her hair pulled back in a messy tie. "They don't know," I heard she whispered, sitting beside me. But I did. "They've talked to someone about declaring you mentally unfit. Some kind of lawyer." Her hands fidgeted in her lap. "I just thought you should know." I didn't want to believe it. I looked at her steady. "I see," I said. She nodded, eyes welling, but didn't speak. I reached for the paper she left the night before. Unfolded it slowly. It was a printout of Pennsylvania's Elder Protection Guidelines. Highlighted power of attorney misuse capacity assessments, protective filing timelines. Riley had underlined a single sentence. "Retaining personal legal documents in a safe, accessible location is advised for protection." I folded it and slipped it into the locked chest. That afternoon, I called May. She picked up on the second ring. May still answered her phone like she used to in the hospital break room, direct without greeting. I told her I needed 30 minutes. She gave me a cafe address in Scranton and said nothing more. I left before sunrise, the folder tucked into a zippered tote beneath my coat. I didn't leave a note. May was already seated when I arrived. Same sharp eyes, same calm presence. The last time we saw each other, we were arguing over end-of-life protocols. Now we sat quietly, two older women with years behind and something urgent ahead. I slid the folder across the table. She didn't touch her coffee. Inside were copies of the deed in my name. The will Harold and I updated the year before his final scan, and something new, a small USB. I'd installed a motion-activated camera in the attic months ago. I never thought I'd need it. She plugged the drive into her laptop. The footage wasn't dramatic, just long conversations between Nolan and Callie in the hallway outside my room. Long enough to capture tone, intent, Motive. Next, the notarized trust paperwork. Updated. Protected. May read every word. No interruptions. When she finished, she leaned back and exhaled. "This is airtight," she said. "You're protected. They don't know what they're dealing with." I stirred my tea. "They think I'm soft." She looked at me. "Let them." We discussed next steps. Quiet ones. I wanted no drama, no confrontation, just borders. Boundaries. Locks that meant something again. May tapped her screen. "I'll file notice this week. No contact from your end. Let them come to you." I nodded. As we stood to leave, she gripped my shoulder like she used to during difficult shifts. The gesture said more than words. I drove home with the windows cracked. The house waited still standing. I unlocked the attic door, slipped the folder back into the chest, and reached for the box beneath it, labeled receipts. The catering van pulled in around noon. I watched it from the upstairs window, 2 fingers resting on the curtain edge. Waitstaff unloaded silver trays and linens while Nolan barked instructions, his tie already askew. Callie followed behind with wine glasses and an open bottle. No one told me about the party. I heard them whispering the day before something about networking a local developer, maybe even a senator's niece. I suppose they assumed I'd stay out of sight. And I did. At first. By 3 o'clock, the garden was full. Music played softly over the speakers Harold wired in years ago. Guests moved in and out of the house freely, their shoes tapping across the floors he sanded by hand. One woman ran her fingers along the stair rail and smiled. "These floors are original," she asked Callie. Callie smiled wide. "We've kept the bones of the place intact." Nolan's father had some vision, I'll give him that. No mention of me. No mention of whose name still held title. I stepped away from the window, went to the attic, took a business card from the envelope May had given me. Simple white embossed. Her name, her office, her reputation. Then I walked downstairs. Nobody noticed me at first. I moved through the hallway like a ghost. Familiar wood beneath my feet, memories pressed into every groove. I stepped onto the patio, the air still warm, the crowd mid-toast. A man turned and smiled politely. "Are you the hostess?" I held his gaze. "No," I said, "but I built this house with the man who did." He looked puzzled but kind. I handed him the card. "If you're looking for property guidance, this firm can help you avoid messy assumptions." Callie stiffened. Nolan turned from the drink cart. His eyes narrowed. I nodded to the guests. "Enjoy your evening." Then I turned back toward the stairs, leaving them to wonder who exactly they had overlooked. It came on a Thursday morning, the kind of gray day where even the birds stayed quiet. Nolan found the envelope on his desk. Cream paper, no return address, heavy in the hand. I heard the rip from the attic. He read it once, then again, slower. Inside were 3 documents: a formal eviction notice signed by May's office, a revocation of the power of attorney 1 he'd quietly filed and forged months earlier, and a cease and desist order barring him or Callie from making any further legal or financial claims regarding my estate. Downstairs, the floor creaked. Cabinet doors opened too fast. Callie's voice followed sharp and rising. "She can't do this," she said. "She can't." Nolan didn't answer right away. I walked to the attic stairs and sat halfway down. I could hear the click of his phone unlocking the slow dialing of a number I already knew. May Lindell, Office of Elder Legal Services. "It's Nolan Mercer," he said. His voice wasn't angry, it was flat. "Tired." "Yes," May replied. "I was expecting your call." There was a long pause. "You went through with it," he said finally. "She already did," May said. Calm. Final. More silence. "Can we fix this?" May's tone didn't change. "This isn't broken, Mr. Mercer. It's protected. There's a difference." Callie let out a frustrated hiss. "Tell her it's a mistake. She'll ruin everything." But Nolan didn't argue. He ended the call. Later, I heard a knock on my door. I didn't answer. I just sat with the last page of the filing spread out on my lap. The house deed restructured under my private trust. Their names nowhere on it. I folded it and slid it into the folder marked Final Copies. Then, I walked downstairs, unlocked the front door, and called the moving company. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't explain or threaten. I simply opened the yellow notepad I kept in the kitchen drawer and started to list furniture, to remove items, to donate boxes to pack. I called the moving company and booked a truck. Friday, 8 a.m. sharp. Riley found me sorting dishes into piles that afternoon. She didn't ask questions, just picked up the tape and began sealing boxes. Some things we packed quietly, others we held a little longer. A photo of Harold Riley's old drawings, the brass letter opener Nolan gave me when he was 10. By evening, the house looked less like a home and more like a shell, still standing, but with all the warmth folded into cardboard. Nolan came in just before dinner. He stopped short in the doorway, staring at the half-empty walls. "What is this?" he asked. Callie rushed in behind him. "Are you moving out?" "No," I said. "You are." They looked at each other. Faces flushed. "You can't do this," Callie snapped. "This is cruel." "We were just trying to help," Nolan said. His voice cracked at the edges. I set the last plate into a padded box and looked at them both. "You weren't helping me," I said. "You were helping yourselves." I just watched. He opened his mouth again, but I shook my head. There was nothing left to explain. That night, Riley stayed with me in the attic. We shared tea, sat on the floor, and talked about anything but them. By morning, the movers arrived. Efficient, quiet, respectful. I handed them a list, showed them what to remove. Everything else stayed. By noon, the house was mine again. When Nolan and Callie returned that evening, their keys no longer fit. May filed the last of the paperwork on a quiet Tuesday morning. We sat at her office desk, a pot of coffee between us, and she slid the final form across with a pen. "It's done," she said. "The house is now registered under your private holding. No one else can touch it." I signed without hesitation. It felt like sealing something closed, not out of bitterness, but clarity. I had spent years holding space for others. Now I was reclaiming it. When I got home, I opened Nolan's old room. The posters were gone. The furniture moved long ago, but the window still let in the same soft light. I cleared out half the space and called the Women's Legal Shelter down in Harrisburg. They had a program for women aging out of bad marriages and worse paperwork. "I have a room," I told them. "No strings. Just space." They accepted by the end of the day. Riley came over later that week with a bag of groceries and 2 recipes she wanted to try. We chopped vegetables, burned one of the pans, and laughed harder than we had in months. She didn't ask questions about her parents. I didn't offer answers. Each week she came back, sometimes with soup, sometimes with silence. We left both on the table. On a slow Sunday afternoon, I opened the side drawer in the kitchen. The old house key sat in my coat pocket, still warm from habit. I held it for a moment, then placed it gently inside the drawer and closed it. I didn't need to carry it anymore. The next morning, I found a handwritten note slid under the door. The seasons turned without announcement. The house no longer echoed with unease, only rhythm. The steady clink of dishes between hands that cared. The hum of music Riley played while sweeping. The low laughter of women visiting from the shelter, some still unsure if they were allowed to laugh at all. It wasn't loud, but it was full. Riley brought her friends over one Friday. College girls, kind and curious. They helped me fix a broken cabinet hinge and asked questions about Harold's old record player. I taught one of them how to prune roses without snapping the stem. She said she'd never held shears before. The lawyer from the shelter stopped by in the evenings sometimes. A sharp woman with thick glasses and quiet fury in her voice when she talked about legal gaps no one fixed. She helped me update my will, more specific this time, more prepared. She asked if I wanted to send a copy to Nolan. I shook my head. The letter came a week later, his handwriting still slanted from years of rushing. The envelope was plain, the message shorter than I expected. I made a mistake. I see that now. I hope someday you'll let me say it out loud. I placed the letter in the bottom drawer beside the old house key. I didn't need to respond. Some truths are better left to live in the silence that follows them. That afternoon, I stepped out into the garden. The shed door creaked open just the way it used to. Harold's tools were still on the hooks, clean, oiled, patient. I ran my fingers along the edge of the workbench, felt the grain of the wood beneath my palm. Then I picked up the hammer, and I began again.